is so like unusual. I love this, but also a woman in the construction and business field. So I'm super excited to introduce Zahra Antaramian to our show today. How exciting. I am so happy to finally meet you in person. I've heard and read so much about you. So you're a Naples native,
Yeah, absolutely.
born and raised. That's kind of unheard of right now.
It is unheard of. A lot of people are they're like, "Wait, there are hospitals here where babies are born?" I'm like, yeah, I know it's
Back
hard to believe.
then, way back then.
Way back then, all 30 years ago, it was prehistoric times. But yes, yeah,
I know it seems like, well, with all the changes we've been through here, people think it is prehistoric times
yeah,
back then.
yeah.
But okay, so having grown up here, how has all the changes, how has all that influenced you being in the real estate world? Like, how did you want to be there?
There's a lot happening right now in real estate in terms of developments, construction that I don't agree with. And I think that development is moving kind of in the wrong direction. And I want to be a big part of correcting that and making sure Naples stays Naples. We stay true to our roots. We're a small town at the end of the day. And that's really our charm. We're not Miami. Everybody kind of knows everybody here. We've always had that small town feel. And I want to really push developments that maintain that and keep that Naples charm.
I am so glad that you said that. That's such a refreshing point of view because I've been on, these websites like Nextdoor or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'll start talking about how I don't really like something. Having been in real estate for 32 years and now doing a career transition, I've seen some really great things happen in the real estate world.
Yep.
And then I've seen some things that I'm like, well, that's going to completely change that side of town.
Yeah. And there are so many developments right now that have reshaped this area, and not in a great way, I don't think, in terms of density, the skyline. I just don't think of Naples and think that when I'm driving, I'm seeing large buildings over the skyline. It's not my town. It's not where I grew up. And listen, development's a huge part of my career and our business, but I think it needs to be done responsibly always, and it needs to be done in a way that's true to the community and the people that live there. That's what a successful development is at the end of the day.
I agree with that 100%. I remember growing up when I was a kid because my mom started in real estate in '80, and they were talking about the buildings in Park Shore.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand at first why,
Yeah.
because of the height and the fire departments and things like that. And then you had to do the stairwells and making sure people could escape safely and things. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yep.
That's a big deal. Like that. And then when you think of this urban sprawl and you think of things like that and how we are, half our community, I think it's half of our square miles are in the Everglades. So we have a little bit of responsibility there.
Yeah.
So I think that's very refreshing, and I also think there's kind of a movement. I belong to a Jeep club, and they were out at the Strand, out in Picayune and things like that, and they were talking about how they're digging up the roads and bringing it back to the way it used to be.
Yep.
And some people are sad to see that happen because those are their trails.
Yeah. And I used to go out there all the time to the squares with my dad.
Okay.
We loved it out there. And I'm a huge, though, advocate of returning the flow south. Yes, we're losing our trails and where we love to explore in a lot of places where we grew up. And I think there's a sadness to that. But at the end of the day, we're restoring our environment to how it should be and how it always really should have continued. But, that area needs to breathe. We've been killing it for so long. And I think part of that, being responsible comes along with that. We need to make sure that we're leaving this place a little bit better than how we found it. And we haven't been doing that the past couple of years. So I think definitely it's changing, though. There's a generation that wants to leave things better than they found it now.
I think that is a trend that we're seeing for sure. So you mentioned your dad, Jack. He was a really big real estate developer. As I mentioned earlier, I was talking to my mom and she's like, oh my gosh. And she remembers meeting him back in the heyday of the 80s and so forth. So what were some of the most valuable lessons you learned from him?
I think the biggest thing he taught me was if everyone's doing it, don't. He was a huge fan of if everyone's buying, you should be selling. And if everyone's selling, you should be buying. And, the old adage of there's blood in the streets, that's when the time is to capitalize. So there's philosophy that he did business by that I try to um, run my own business by as well, because it really has. You look at the Warren Buffetts and all these huge successful investors, that's how they run their businesses as well. If everyone's doing it, don't be. And that's really what I remember about him most when it comes to business.
Okay, I like that's an interesting way to put it, though.
Yeah.
If everybody's doing it, don't, because I can think of so many things that could apply for.
Yeah. If all your friends are jumping
Socially,
off a cliff.
yeah, right. I mean, there's just so many things. Now, you lost your dad at a young age. I think you were still in high school.
I was 20. I was in college
Oh,
at the
okay, you're
time.
in
Yeah.
college. Okay.
Yeah.
So how did that impact you in your younger years and then transitioning into a field that he was very predominant in?
Yeah, it was hard, of course, to lose him before I was ready. I don't think you're ever ready, but certainly in my really formative years, before I got to know him as an adult. And I think that's an interesting thing because I now, of course, I'm older and I get to know my mom as an adult, and you get to know your parents in a much different way when you're an adult. You get to kind of see that they're human and they struggle just like you do. Whereas when you're a kid, they're your hero and they're bulletproof. I think as an adult, you see a much more real side of them. So losing that and not getting to experience that was hard, and of course harder as I begin to understand more and more what I lost. But you also gain a great sense of motivation from it, because you're left to pick up the pieces and you're forced to figure out how to make things work. My dad was my safety net and he was my hero. And when he was gone, largely left to figure it out on my own, which it's like throw you in the deep end, learn how to swim, right? So it's a horrible, horrible thing. But it was also probably one of my greatest lessons that he taught me was you can figure this out on your own. You don't need me holding your hand. You can do this. I've raised you to do this.
Wow, that's really powerful. That's really powerful, especially for people who've been through loss. I think you can do one of two things. You can use it as a power to let it propel you in the right direction or forward. I don't know if there's any right or wrong direction, but
Yeah,
propel you in the right direction, or you can stay stuck in the loss.
absolutely.
We just went through a loss in my family, and I can see the family kind of half the family's like
Yeah.
figuring it out, and the other half is just kind of like still dazed.
Yeah.
It might take some time, for everyone, but I think that's really powerful words for people who are going through that.
There's ebb and flow in it. There's some days where I don't want to get out of bed, and I miss him, and it's hard to see the next day. And then there's days where I use that as like it's my chip on my shoulder. I want to keep going, and I want to show him he was right.
So you started this company, ADG4,
Yeah.
and you started it. It was kind of like an offshoot or a second generation of what your dad started.
Yep.
So tell us how you made that decision at a young age, because you are 30.
Yeah.
So we're talking 7, 8 years here. You get, oh, okay, this is what I'm going to do in 2019. You weren't even 30 yet.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go do a big business. Let me figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, go big or go home, right? I don't know any different because my dad was such a visionary and such a big thinker that it wasn't even a second thought. I didn't have fear. I just kind of jumped in. But at 20, right after I lost my dad, I started my own business doing construction management and kind of got my feet under me. Started to figure out, could I really do this? Did I really understand the industry? Because it's one thing to grow up in it. It's another thing to run your own business successfully within it, right? We don't understand as kids. It looks easy when your parents are doing it, but I think it's a whole different thing when you realize, oh, taxes. You just you never think about things like that. You're just like, I'm running my own business, right? But there's a million different things that go into that. So as I started to get my feet wet and really started to understand the business, I decided I'd go out and get my contractor's license with the state of Florida. So I successfully did that, and I stabilized a lot for a couple years, and then I decided why not get the band back together, and collected my dad's old partners and asked them if they would be up for take two and building a second generation company.
So I read that in the bio and on the
Mhm.
website that you brought in kind of like the old guard.
Yeah.
Now, some people would not want in this environment nowadays, especially, is they don't want the old school environment
Yeah.
or the mindset of, well, this is how we used to do it.
Yeah.
So what made you decide that, hey, I'm not going to go out and find these new people. I want to go back to roots, back to like, what were you thinking?
Yeah, I think largely my dad always hired the smartest people in the room. And I saw that and learned so much from it that we are all very good at what we specialize in. And we have to understand that you stay in your own lane and you're good at what you're good at. And then we hire the smartest people we can find to do the rest, right? And his team was the best of the best. So in order for me to grow a business, I knew there were no better people for me to grow alongside and to trust because I saw them work with him for so many years. They were family to me. So I really wanted to be successful alongside them. I wanted to experience that with people I love. And at the end of the day, there's nobody to do business with that's better than people you trust wholeheartedly to have your interests, have your back. And whether it's with clients or whoever it is, your partners knowing you through and through is super important. And they're it for me. They're my team, and I wouldn't pick anybody else. That's for sure.
I like how you said that, like, get the band back together, but it also, when you're talking about the culture within your management team, at least especially in the upper management that you're working with the old school,
Yeah.
and the band back together, is almost like you're talking about a second family too.
They are my family. They certainly are. I mean, I grew up around them, and I can't say enough good things about them. And they've taught me so much in the past couple of years. I'll learn from them for as long as they'll be around with me. I learn something new every time I speak to them, and they're just an invaluable resource for me to keep learning, keep growing. And for me, I also realize I'm green, and to have some experience behind me that have done projects I couldn't even dream of, it's a huge advantage for me. I can go out and be the risky young blood, and they're kind of the tempering tempering experienced wisdom. So it's a great dynamic there. I think that there's that push and pull, and together I think we go forward in a very, very great way.
I like how you're saying that they're kind of, they keep you tempered because you obviously think big and you dream big.
I do.
And I think that goes, as you said, a testament to your father. But to also, at this stage of your life, it almost sounds like you're a little fearless. But I also see you walking, for some reason, as you're talking, I vision you're walking into a boardroom and the three of them are there and you're like, okay, this is the idea I have. And they're like, oh, here she is. And then one of them's like, okay, this kind of sounds good. And the other one says, like there's a little conversation.
Yeah.
And you're like, isn't it great? And okay. And they try to see how they can make it work because it is a good idea, because it's new ideas.
Yep.
But they have the experience.
Exactly. And the execution. There are things I think of that I've never executed before. So it might be a huge dream. Can you execute it though? And they're the people that have done it. To have them one phone call or text away it's incredible. So they're definitely bringing me back down to earth a lot, but that's what I needed, and I'll continue to need, right? So, and there are ideas I bring to them, and they're like, okay, we can roll with this, and they kind of temper my craziness with that book smart of this is how we can pull it off.
I call it creativity.
That's another way to say it.
Well, because I'm almost seeing you right now as speaking to you in this way, business-wise, instead of a social setting, that you have, you're kind of striking me as the Elon Musk creative person in a world that's been very linear and very, I picture like a very linear, upright, square building. And you're saying, okay, but how can we make it better? How can we change it? How can we expand on it, but still keep our Naples community or whatever community we're in, keep it without over gentrifying it or something.
Yep, absolutely.
So I think it's old meets new.
Yeah, and it's a great combination for us, I think.
I think that's a lot of things people didn't know about the new company.
Yeah,
You're
like,
carrying a name that comes from one type of possibly in their mind because they may have never met your father or his business, but they only know the legacy.
Yeah.
And here you are talking about the new world, the new
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
with a little bit of the let's keep things
Yeah.
steady flow and really on track.
Yeah, it's the best of both worlds, I think.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's incredible. Like, I'm just blown away right now. I really am. For those of you who don't know, you really have to follow up and read and reach out and learn more, because this is just, I really love this. And I mean, I love all the people I interview, but I love the story because you can also tell by talking to you, like, your soul is in this.
It is. Everything I have is in this company, and that largely is because before my dad passed, he asked me to take care of my mom and my brother, and I promised him I would. So this business is an embodiment of that promise I made to my father. So you can't bet against me, really, when you've got that behind. It's just this is my passion project. It's everything. This is my life.
I don't bet against her. I wouldn't. So tell me about some key projects coming up for ADG4.
So right now, our most prominent project, we're working with the Port Royal Club. They're doing a renovation of their fitness center. So we've been working with them to design that and execute that for them over the summer. So that's been a really exciting project for us, and a challenging one as well. They've got some definite obstacles to overcome in terms of timelines and stuff like that, because they want to be reopened for season. So they hired us to really have somebody on the job that they knew could get it done within their timeline and at their level of quality that they expect, right? So they're a demanding client. We love demanding clients. That's how we work. There's no room for error here in this business. So we're really pushing for perfection with them.
So on that, as I need to know, tell me all the things that ADG4 does, because it seems like you have a lot of extensions going on of your different businesses.
Yeah, so we do commercial property management, owner representation services, which some people, I often get the question of what that is. Owner representation is like sometimes just a fancy way to say construction management, right? But we are responsible for everything that goes in front of the owner, and we're their liaison in front of the contractor, which more and more is becoming so important when you're building huge single-family homes, when you're building something large in the commercial realm, or anything that's really just a complex endeavor. You want an owner's rep that's in your corner, that's going to represent you in front of the contractor, get you the best prices, and keep your job on schedule. That's what people want. They want on budget and on schedule, right? So that's what we do. We push to make sure people's projects done get right. Ultimately, though, we're also moving back into real estate development. We're slowly easing that direction. That's our ultimate goal within the next couple of years. But yeah, those are our three primary focuses.
I could have used an owner's representation when I built my 9,000 square foot under air, 12,000 total house.
Oh, yeah.
I lived here, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But then maybe my roof wouldn't have been wrong.
Yeah. We get a lot of people.
Because I'd never done a house of that scale. I've done some small projects real estate wise. So I'm looking at plans and I'm like, what is this? What is that?
Yep.
And then the roof was supposed to be open, the attic, and it ended up having a wall in the middle. And
I can't tell you how many times we speak to a client and they don't understand the value right off the bat of an owner's rep until they're bitten. Yeah. And then they come back to us and they say, well, okay, we kind of need an owner's rep now. Well, you're kind of in a mess now, so we have to untangle this ball for you that the contractors created. And I think there's a misconception that contractors don't want to work with us. Most contractors that work with us, by the end of it, they love us because we make their job easier. We're the ones who are, having that face-to-face with the owner of what color is that wall going to be, so they don't have to pick up the phone 20 times to get an answer. We'll handle it for them. So there's definitely a synergy there that people don't realize exists, and a benefit to both parties.
Well, I can see it for sure. And when people are out of state building a house, I think you can't do it without it.
Absolutely. Even with security cameras, we have a lot of people who think they'll put a security camera on the job site and they'll check it so they know it. Well, if you know people aren't coming, that's just the first step. It's then, do you have somebody that can push them to be there, hold them accountable, make sure they're doing the right things.
And then find out why.
Yeah.
Could be a delivery problem. If you're not getting your trusses, nobody's showing up that day. If they're not being delivered, they're not just going to sit there and stare at the air.
Absolutely.
And explaining that to someone versus the contractor who it might take you 2 days to get a hold of.
Yep.
So yeah, no, I can totally. What a gap that you are filling. You mentioned earlier about loyalty. So you talked about the people that you've brought in, the loyalty and teamwork in the dynamic in your culture that you've created. So was that a combination, or how do you feel that that's come about, and what does it look like to you?
My dad's original group, that was a huge component of it, was loyalty, and that's what drew me to the group originally. Was I knew how they worked together, and I knew that was the type of team I wanted to have. It was something where we protected each other and we were loyal to one another. I think largely also people want to work with teams like that. They want to work with teams that are not going to fall apart, right, when things get hard. We're not going to give up on each other when things get hard. We have withstood the test of time. We know each other in and out, and we would walk into fire for each other. I think that's who people want to be working with, because they know people like that aren't going to quit.
So I think you also attract that same hiring when you're hiring. If people see that at the top, I think like-minded people attract those kind of people to work for them, because it sounds like your culture in your company is very strong in that way.
We want people to feel as if they're family. That's how we build our company. That's how we operate your family if you're with us.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I like the teamwork, but I like the culture family part. I know when I joined a real estate office, my mom owned her own office for years. So when I joined a new company, I kind of was, what do I want to, and I tried one company and these are not my humans. And then, but I found one that had a very similar feel as working for my mom. And it had that family culture. And weirdly, it was family owned. So
you have to feel like the people you're with care about you. And if you don't have that, nothing's going to be successful. You have to make people feel cared for. And if they're out there, working really hard for you every single day, you should care about them and how they're feeling and where they're at mentally, and take care of them.
That's a great culture to have. Absolutely. So your company has seen a lot of growth recently, but let's go back to when you started. You started in 2019.
We did.
And then, 2020 happens.
Yeah.
And you've gone from that to 19 to 20, survived that, and now you're in this rapid growth.
Yeah.
So what has that journey been like from 19 to 20, and then from, say, 22 to now?
We were relatively lucky with COVID because we don't have to face-to-face too much. HOA meetings and things like that were interesting in terms of making sure people were spaced out, but it was largely crickets in the beginning, right? I think, unfortunately, largely how it always is, right? We always think the phone's gonna be ringing off the hook as soon as you open up, and you're like, oh, okay, all right, just wait here for the phone to ring, it's fine. But now you get into that rhythm of things where you get all of these word of mouth referrals, and you're really getting traction now, and it's a great feeling to have our name out there. People are recognizing the work we're doing, how good we are, and that we're different than other property management companies. We answer our phones. We're going to be there when you call, and we're going to take care of you. Whereas even property management companies that I've worked with directly for my own properties, I'm like, calling for hours. It's not the case with us. We want to be different, and I think we finally established that locally, that we are different, and we're going to make a difference for you and your property.
Wow, that's incredible. I keep saying how impressed I am, because when I read your bio and I went to the company website, I was like, are you sure she's not like 45? But I like that we have so many young entrepreneurs, and you being one of them, in our community, because we've had a lot of people come from out of state, and they don't understand what we are and what we were. I mean, I've been here since '78. I moved when I was 10. You guys can do the math. But I see people come from out of state, and I think they mean well in some instances, but they just don't know what we're about. Like you said, we're a small community.
Yeah, I think it's there are a lot of people here who grew up here where we still have sand on our feet. That's the essence of the community, right? It's not Miami. It still has a small town vibe to it where we all grew up around the pier, or we all grew up, riding our bikes down Gulf Shore Boulevard or to the pier, wherever. That's where
Yeah.
we spent our days. So it's about really preserving that culture, that feeling for the next generation. Because I think we're losing that a little bit.
I'm up in Pelican Bay, and when I see the houses and the new ones going up, I'm like, come on, guys, we have design standards. No, I remember those design standards because I was in 1980, I was at the first open house
Yeah.
because of my mother. And I remember how many conversations were had about design standards
Yeah.
for one development and how no two houses could be the same next to each other,
Yep.
which is what made the community kind of unique. You could have a brick house, a white house, white roof, black roof, whatever.
Yeah.
They weren't all the same cookie cutter. And some of the construction I see going in there, somebody must have said something because now there's a few changes happening. But I don't want to drive on a cul-de-sac and see every house look the same. I didn't arrive into that neighborhood.
Yep.
So I think it's good that people are going back to let's be unique.
Absolutely.
Let's stand out, but not ruin where we're at.
Yep.
So you do work with potential capital partners. And now I'm saying, so you're 30 years old, and in some aspects, some people might feel this as a woman. There might be a difference in approaching capital partners.
Absolutely.
So how do you feel being a woman doing that, your age doing that, and then the confidence? Where do you find I mean, this is like a multifaceted question. Sorry, I'm like throwing it at you all like that.
Yeah.
But it's a big deal to go say, hey, I need you to partner with me. And by the way, I need this much money.
It is, and it's intimidating. It just is, to be completely honest with you. I mean, you have to gather a confidence that you don't always feel you have. But yeah, I mean, we want to form a long-term relationship with a capital partner that has the same vision that we do for Naples long term, that wants to join in on developments that, you know, like we discussed, are true to this community and true to this area, but also enjoy that investments here are very lucrative. It's a great area to invest in at the end of the day. But I largely gain a lot of my confidence from my dad, and just his belief in me. I try to carry that with me. So that takes me into meetings with a sense of I can do this, and I know that I have a team that'll back me up for what I don't know. For women, capital is hard. Women traditionally don't receive as much capital as men,
Mm.
but I never look at it from that lens, right? It's not a defeatist lens, but it's a hard lens for me to gain confidence and feel like I'm gonna pull this off if I look at it from that lens. I don't want to approach it that way. I always think if I'm showing what I'm capable of, showing what my team is capable of, I'm in the running just like everybody else. And that's how I've approached everything in my life, that you work hard enough, you display who you are, what your story is, and why they should pick you, you'll win at the end of the day.
I think that's an incredible thing for a lot of women, especially young women nowadays, to take with them, because I do feel like there's a little bit of a shift. I know there's some people out there that feels like there isn't. I've had a few interviews where people were still about statistics.
Yeah.
And I say, well, if you look at statistics, they can feel defeating,
Yes.
or you can get a little bit of a chip. And I think when you go in, especially when you're asking for big dollars, I think people can feel that chip.
Yes.
And when you go in with, I know my stuff, which you do, I'm confident, which you absolutely are, and you go in there and you say, hey, I am going to make this happen.
Yeah.
Do you want to partner with me?
Yeah.
It sounds like how you go in there, like, not can I partner? It's like, do you want to partner with us? Because we've got this great thing going on.
Yeah. We have a great portfolio. We have a great team. I mean, I stand by that, and I can't approach it from any other angle because why would I when I've got so much going for me? I'm not fighting for anything. You know, I'm well in the competition. So that's how I approach everything, because you can't start on your back foot.
Oh, that's another great. We've got some great sayings coming out of this interview. I'm gonna start writing them down, and definitely I'm gonna rewatch this, and I'm gonna definitely borrow a few of those because you definitely have some great one-liners in there.
Well, it's like, I don't ever want to come across as inauthentic or anything like that, especially in meeting with capital partners, right? You want to be true to who you are, and I know who I am. I know I'm good at what I do. I know my team is good at what I do. Um, good at what they do. But I yeah, I've always, to your point, thought of that and the statistics of it and all of that. And there is merit to it, absolutely, but you got to go in thinking you're right in that race.
What would you say some of your biggest challenges have been in your career, and how did you overcome them?
I would say getting the phone to ring, right? That's always the hardest challenge for any new business, getting your name out there without having to do a huge amount of marketing and all these different things. We had a network here, luckily, from the business we've done in the past that helped us out, pointed us in the right direction, gave us referrals, and gave us that initial traction. But that initial hurdle of getting your name out there and getting people to understand who you are, what you do, what you're about, that was our biggest challenge. And it's a challenge we still face to this day. It's a challenge I think every business continues to face as they evolve. Who are you? What is your why? What do you bring that's different to clients? And we strive to answer that question for clients every single day. And we'll continue to do that and continue to evolve and answer that as best we can.
Yeah, getting the phone to ring in any business sometimes can be a huge challenge. And being a seasonal
Yeah.
area that we are,
Yeah.
I know that people, they got a little spoiled during 2021, 22.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then last year they said, it was like somebody turned off a light switch. I'm like, welcome back.
I know. And now it's been a blessing, really, because things have reversed and now the phone's ringing off the hook and we turn away people at this point, so now we're at that point where we have to pick our client and we have to know who we want to work with, who is the right client for us, because we want to work with high quality people. We want to work with high quality properties. We have to make sure that we're the right fit for it and they're the right fit for us. But absolutely getting to that point where you are confident in your ability to generate business on your own name, that's the hardest.
Now, this wasn't here on the questions, but I just had a thought and I wanted to address it. Because of your name, did you find starting out people said, I can already tell by the look on your face, you already know where I'm going. Did you find that people said, oh, here's the daughter thinking she can be her dad?
Yeah. I always, it's funny, I always got a lot of respect in construction from guys I didn't know. As a 20-year-old girl, really just starting out, because of my dad and because they had so much respect for him. And I'm not talking like CEOs or anything. I'm talking like tile layers and stuff like that. My dad he knew everybody and he treated everybody with so much respect. It didn't matter who you were. And because of that, I almost felt like I was protected on job sites because he had established such a name for himself. So that was one experience I had. And then another one, I always really tried hard to put off that humbleness that I'm not him. I'm never going to be him. And I'm not trying to be him. I'm going to be my own version of who I want to be and who I want to become. I have to be authentic and true to myself. I live in his footsteps because I've put myself there, which is my own struggle. But largely, I think I've tried so hard to make sure people know I'm never going to try to be the legend, right, that he was. I will be my own if I'm going to be one. I won't be the follow-up act, right? I don't think my dad wanted that, and I don't want that either. I want to make my own name.
Well, you stand on your own merits.
Yeah.
You just happen to have the same name.
Absolutely. I think knowing that you have to be humble. You have to come across as understanding that you don't know everything just because of who your father was. Because there's just so many things I have learned from, 20 to now, and so much more I have to learn, that you want to approach everything with this open mind and humbleness. And I hope that comes across to people.
Well, it's coming across to me, so if that helps. Now, to wrap things up, we haven't talked about anything personal except for you grew up here. So, how do you balance the demands of running a successful business, being 30? Like, how do you balance your personal life, your professional life? I know for myself, I've interviewed moms and things like that,
Yeah.
and I don't call it balance anymore. I just call it managing.
Yeah.
But still you're single. So being single, you may have that extra time, but you still have a personal, like you still have yourself you have to
I have 3
maintain.
dogs.
Okay, that's a
that
job.
are my whole world. And I take one big vacation a year that I take time off, I shut off my phone, and I decompress. But it's something where I think when I decided to form this company and I had people who took a risk on me, and really didn't know whether or not I could stand behind who I was and who I was going to be. Because of that, you feel this push and this drive within yourself to never stop. And that it's constantly working, and you're constantly trying to discover new opportunities, and you're working for these people that believe in you. And because of that, I don't ever feel able to take a moment or take a breath to stop until I feel like I've reached this mountain that I'm climbing, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time. But I love what I do so much that this is my life right now. But it's also my family, So it's this great blend of getting to love the people I work with, love the business I've built, be passionate about it, and go home and I might have to write an email at 11 o'clock at night, but that's okay. It's what I love to do. It's a great, I think, it's a great way to live your life when you're young. As I get older, it remains to be seen, right? Because I think as you get older, you start to want to slow down and do different things. But right now, I love working and driving and pushing towards that mountain.
Well, they say find what you love and do what you love. And it sounds like you really have found, I can feel your passion and your enjoyment of it, that it is your work-life balance, at least right now at this stage.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great having you as a guest.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, Zahra, for joining us and sharing your journey from and through the legacy and to where you are now. I think it's an incredible story, and I wish you so much luck. I cannot wait to see what's coming in the future.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Kristen Weardon Show. You can find more information on Zahra and her company. It'll be linked in the description of the podcast, and you can find the podcast on your favorite platform as well as iHeartRadio. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.